Alrighty, and we are back for the 55th episode of the Black Stitch Hockey Cast. Took a nice little 2 Sunday hiatus, which was 100% my fault. I was down in the House of Mouse, pardon me. Um, Obviously, as people have seen, we've had some brand identity shakeups over the last few days. Um, Shifting one of our founding members out due to a number of reasons which we're not going to get into on here. And, really trying to see what a shift in content will look like with that in mind. Pardon me as I get my headphones working to give you guys. Okay. And there we go. Awesome. Got Liam back as expected. No changes between the EIC and the operations officer that I am at this point in time. Really, the only difference I think in this platform and the brand quality is I think we're going to see more of a focus on junior and collegiate hockey, even on this platform moving forward. Just as really the fact that he's very much our junior and European hockey specialist, and I am very geared into Division III for the 2024-25 season, as well as PWHL. And that's how I'm opening up the week.
Yeah. Developments on our end were perfectly timed with changes in the collegiate landscape slash the interactions between the junior hockey ones. Really fortuitous that it happened in a spot where we're going to be able to talk about this content more. But before I dive into the biggest headline of the week, I'll get into some on the margin stuff. Just to quickly bat that out before we start talking about the massive amounts of dialogue that have sprung out of that change. Because there's a lot I want to discuss because there are different perspectives from qualified individuals that are worth bringing into that conversation. But going back a couple of weeks, this happened. I try to, even when there's a bit of a layover, try to keep things condensed to developments within the past week. But I'll make my exceptions from time to time if I deem it significant enough. Ryan Kennedy of the Hockey News reported a couple weeks ago. He made kind of a bit of a slip as he referred to it as a potential CBA decision, but it's not really that so much as it is something tied specifically to the NHL-CHL agreement. But nevertheless, he said that 18 and 19-year-olds may be soon permitted to make an immediate AHL transfer, and that might be talks included in talks for a revised agreement between the NHL and CHL, which he specifically denoted as useful for the sort of like the tweener archetype of would benefit from AHL time, such as a Matthew Savoy, who probably would have benefited more from going directly to the A than the sort of stagnation he hit by returning to the WHL, which we're seeing now. He's still stuck at the point where even in his D+3, he hasn't had much staying power in the pros. Still just the one NHL game played. Of course, now with him being in Edmonton, the roster is significantly harder to crack. But we also saw him, be given ample opportunity in Buffalo and never made that jump. Whereas Zach Benson was NHL ready from day one. So, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. And people like that who are in that situation, those sort of young players, they would definitely benefit from some AHL time. But moving into more results-oriented stuff in the CHL, let me find that. So Gavin McKenna was the first player in the WHL to crack 30 points this year, having reached that plateau in a game against the Lethbridge Hurricanes. That was quite a shootout, akin to that one that took place between the London Knights and Guelph Storm in the OHL earlier today. Let's see. I had the highlights pulled up. I was checking them out earlier. Uh, da, 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 da. Yeah, 7-6 was the final score in that game, which was somewhat emotive, as that was the first time that Lethbridge had encountered their former goaltender, 2004 born Harrison Menigan, since he was traded at the beginning of October. That was the come from behind victory for Lethbridge, in which they improved their record to 8-1-1. We also had Michael Misa reached the 20-goal plateau, with him gunning for that #1 spot in this coming draft, on just being on this absolute goal scoring tear, sort of using his physical gifts and his profile more to his strengths than with him having been a playmaker for many years before this. He's kind of tapped into sort of Austin Matthews esque play style, and it seems to be doing a lot for him. I don't know necessarily if he's going to sustain this clip where he's breaking the single season OHL goal scoring record. But I think that he's going to finish with some really, really good stats, and, maybe fend off or at least hang right with James Hagens and Porter Martone in the discussion of who sits at the top of the 2025 class. Let me see something real quick. It's just interesting thinking about that one because, yeah, Hagen's got off to a bit of a slow start, although him developing further chemistry with Gabriel Peralt has done him some good. We're seeing him spread his wings, no eagle pun intended, a bit right now. And but on that topic, though, Misa actually is now up to 22 goals, having reached his 22nd tally of the year in the ongoing game between Saginaw and Flint, and some Michigan on Michigan action in the O currently. But moving away from that for a moment, let's see what else. So we did hear alternatively that first from Jamie Tozer over at the phenomenal St. John Sea Dogs / General QMJHL blog, Station Nation, that the QMJHL is looking at American expansion again. That's in tandem with the changing environment that I'll discuss momentarily. Kind of just capitalizing on some shifts that are occurring there and some potential and increased American interest in the CHL. Tozer opines Manchester, New Hampshire is a possible target, although Maine, be it Portland or Lewiston again for that matter, are possible, or even Lowell, Massachusetts for a potential, something that feels like a reach but makes sense on the surface when you kind of consider like the layers to it. There might be some logistical challenges for travel, and also inevitably there's always going to be the visa aspect that American teams in the CHL have to confront as well. But it isn't something to be totally rolled out. Let's see. The OHL commissioner had a statement as well on a similar note. Let's see. Man, I thought And I had it right there. Let's see. Here we go. So Josh Brown over at the Waterloo Region Record states that OHL Commissioner Brian Crawford knows that expansion is a hot topic currently, and that a Toronto team is the top priority if that does occur. Let's see. The OHL hasn't added an expansion franchise since the late 1990s when the St. Michael's Majors, now the Brampton Steelheads, Mississauga Ice Dogs, now the Niagara Ice Dogs, and Brampton Battalion, now the North Bay Battalion, joined the loop. Since then, Crawford confirmed that other cities and ownership groups have approached the league about acquiring existing teams or adding new ones, though he won't give specifics. Quote, from the new commissioner who took over in June following the retirement of David Branch. Those conversations have historically always been ones that are ongoing and will continue under my tenure. Other names in the mix have been Belleville, Buffalo, New York, for another potential American target. Burlington, Ontario, Chatham, Cornwall, which of course was home to the Royals, who originally were in the queue due to their location immediately across the border, but had a successful run producing some good players like Doug Gilmore and Owen Nolan that they were in the O. The Greater Toronto area at large, some proposed towns include Richmond Hill, Vaughan, Markham, and Etobicoke. Hamilton, if they don't get an AHL or ECHL club, of course. I can't imagine they're going to go without an elite hockey team for very long. Thunder Bay, of course, logistical travel issues there potentially, but as Brown notes, talk to WHL and QMJHL teams about road trips. It can be done. And of course, another potential Northern Ontario target would be Timmins, which would be interesting. But from what I gather, the old Maple Leaf Gardens would be the most likely target if the Toronto destination came about. Some points that were made is like it's a staple of home region pride, but very few kids actually grew up in that league in the downtown section. Most of them are from the outlying suburbs, so it's like you kind of have to gauge how significant the interest would be from the player end. But I mean, if they get it right, like bringing it back to T Dot could be a pretty successful endeavor. But now, of course, we shift into the biggest news in dev leagues from the week. Of course, the NCAA Division I Council met on Thursday at 2 p.m. and made the determination that beginning in the 25-26 season, players from the CHL will be permitted to play Division I college ice hockey in the United States. There are different statements issued on this topic from a variety of leagues, including affected constituents and rival leagues. Let's see, we'll just bat these out really quickly. We'll start off with the USHL. Let's see. Their statement in response to NCAA rule change was, since inception, the United States Hockey League development model has been holistically and intentionally aligned with the student-athlete experience. The USHL remains the world's premier development path. All aspects of the league are focused on preparing athletes for collegiate and professional hockey, inclusive of on-ice, academic, and character development. The USHL claims more than half of NCAA Division I men's ice hockey players while producing more NHL draft picks than any other league in the world over the past 8 seasons. The USHL prepares players by providing them exposure, resources, and experiences that empower young men for peak success. As noted by Mike McMahon, additionally, over at the College Hockey Network, College Hockey News, and College Hockey Insider newsletter, as well as Merrimack College Hockey Beat for the Eagle Tribune for almost 20 years now. He notes that another key difference players look this rule change applies only to D1 players. Players looking to play in Division III will have their eligibility jeopardized by playing in the CHL. Ryan Kennedy at the Hockey News again. If you're wondering what major junior players NCAA teams will now be courting, I've heard Oliver Tolk from the WHL's Calgary Hitmen has been a popular scouting target. He's 5'8", 174 pounds, and had 40 goals last year. This season, he's at more than a point per game. Let's see. McMahon additionally notes there are a few players playing CHL who are currently committed to NCAA schools. Braxton Whitehead to Arizona State was the first public commitment. I know at least 10 to 12 players who have committed quietly, expecting we'll start to see announcements in the coming days. Let's see.
That trickle-down effect is going to be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Very glad to have you on this episode of the podcast, Matt, since I think we're all pretty aware this is going to be a very heavy collegiate week as Liam gets through his notes to really put this together. I think, Matt, because this will also be good for you as a D3 player who's around the D3 space and the collegiate space. A lot of education, I think, for you and your peers potentially on this podcast episode as well. So you've got a front row seat to Liam being really a guy who I think is going to spell this out for all the recent news in a way that is easily digestible for the student athlete.
100%.
Pardon me. I'm on the Blake Coleman diet right now of consuming pickles and pickle juice for anti-cramping effects. An open letter to the OHL community regarding NCAA player eligibility changes from OHL Commissioner Brian Crawford read, "Today is a big day for hockey and the young players that make our great game so special. On behalf of the Ontario Hockey League, I'm excited to share the collective enthusiasm expressed league-wide following the NCAA Division I Council's vote affirming the eligibility of Canadian Hockey League players for NCAA D1 hockey programs effective August 1st, 2025. This is a landmark decision that gives OHL players additional avenues and opportunities to pursue their hockey, academic, and life goals upon graduation from our league, which ties back to what I originally read. The regulations would be like this, for this rule change in like the early part of this calendar year, where it's most likely there will be safeguards preventing, like, say, with commitment from a 17-year-old for like the coming season. It most likely will be akin to overagers moving on to the collegiate space after they complete their junior career. Let's see. It also opens, the OHL's doors to talented young player athletes with NCAA aspirations, providing them the opportunity to take their game to the next level in the #1 development league in the world. The OHL will continue to maintain a high standard as a leading supplier of talent to the National Hockey League, while emphasizing the same blend of on-ice excellence with an off-ice commitment to character development and academics that has made the league what it is today. Yeah, that's why Tyler Sagan had a GPA in like the 2s when he was there. Through this transition, the league will continue to honor its commitments through the OHL scholarship to players as they play out their years of eligibility, setting 20 and 21-year-old graduates up for success as they embark on new challenges both on the ice and in the classroom through both the NCAA and U Sports. I'm not so sure about the latter. I don't think there will be as much incentive now, but all right. The Ontario Hockey League, hold on. Let's see. There we go. Has produced world-class talent for decades, and this latest development signals a new chapter in the story of the greatest junior hockey league in the world. It's a pleasure to be part of the OHL community, and I share our collective excitement for what the future holds. Yours in hockey, Brian Crawford. Let's see. I'm going to see if there are any decent excerpts from what the New England Hockey Journal wrote on this topic. Let's see. What do we got for us? Because I didn't get a chance to look this over too much.
No worries.
Yeah,
I,
there was a lot of bombardment. Like the whole thing that is because Scott Wheeler had an impromptu interview with the CHL coach, which like was very. I'm gonna read that transcript first, because it's very intriguing, and there are some things where he gets the general veneer right, but there are some things that he was totally off on, and was rightfully corrected on for that. He said to Wheeler, this unnamed coach, while going on record, with no name attached, nevertheless, very interesting. I have a little vent session. First, I don't know what it's going to do to our game. At the end of the day, I think moms and dads are running the world nowadays. Now, anyways, at the end of the day, if someone's not happy, they can go in the portal, ask for a trade, not report, and I get it. There's 100% times when kids have that right and they haven't been utilized properly or treated well enough. I get tired of hearing about college hockey and how great it is. 90% of those kids are barely on scholarships. Not true, by the way. But all we hear is the scholarship stuff. Most of those kids got one choice because they're not first round picks. I think the best thing about college is the college experience, being on campus, going to class, going to a football game, the hockey itself. I think there's a handful of programs that are good and the rest won't get fired. I'm on the hot seat. I can tell you of guys in the NCAA that haven't been in the hot seat in their life but continue to keep their jobs. I've got agents that tell me their kids in college don't develop. Holy Cross, Bentley, when was the last time those programs had winning records? No one telling, but Holy Cross had a winning record last season. And we're the big man on campus as the CHL. We have money, so people are going to come at us with all of these lawsuits that they weren't happy. Nobody comes after junior A hockey when a kid from Penticton gets traded to Prince Edward Island. And nobody says a word, but we trade a kid within our own league among teams that are pretty respectable franchises. You get your scholarship still going forward. It's getting pretty tiresome being the whipping boy when nobody is allowed to fight back. What's this going to do? I don't know. Nobody asks about all those kids in the portal every year, and they're not happy either. The kids who went to the Chicago Steel, it's agent-driven, but it's because they had a hell of a program. Same with Brendan Arado. Those are the programs I love. Brendan's developing players. That's why kids want to go there. They're going to become better players. I train these kids. They're getting everything possible to be better. Small area games, scanning, letting them make decisions. We don't just play route hockey here, but those programs are few and far between, and we're always on the hot seat in junior in a lot of places trying to do that. There are places where they try to get you to quit just so you can get your scholarship back. I just want people to say, here's the good, here's the bad, make your choice, and I think the leagues do it. NCAA, I don't personally hear them bad-mouthing us. We don't bad-mouth them. It's all the noise around it. Let's just lay all of our cards on the table and give the kids the best opportunity. And we have to teach the kids and accountability because players right from an early age, let's see. The kids just keep changing teams and make another team and buy another team and go to another academy. It's not just a sport, it's a business and parent driven. The USHL hopefully will be on par, and the US is doing such a good job developing players. We get in the way in Canada. We produce players only because our players still start in one sport here, and we're not progressive in any way, shape, or form in this country. USA Hockey is just so far ahead with their programming and their thought process. And when it becomes a race of we've got to sign him or he's going to leave, we burn a different kid if that doesn't work out. And the kids with all the talent shows up and he doesn't know what to do in a 1-2-2. And you make mistakes with these poor kids, unfortunately. At the end of the day, you want these kids to have a good experience. That's what I want out of this. You want accountability and to be demanded on, but you want to be treated well and fairly. And not every kid is going to walk away happy. with it, but that's my goal, and it's my hope that that's all the way through. USHL, CHL, everywhere. And the other thing that doesn't get talked about is the amount of programs that we're doing for these kids now. And yes, we went through stupid eras of hazing, and now everything that goes on makes us better. The education that these kids get now, we spent our first month just going through different seminars here to try and make these kids better. And as we know, that 18 to 25-year-old brain is mush. Decision making is near impossible for them, let alone on the ice, but off the ice and with all the stuff that's on them. And we're trying to educate these kids now in the whole CHL, and I know it's come out of the dark days, but we're now light years ahead of where guys were in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And look, our game is amazing, the speed and the skill. There are some nights where you want guys held accountable for their actions, but we just can't go backwards, and it's just such a good game right now. Let's see. Mike McMahon pointed out some flaws in this one. Fuck. Man, this stupid fucking feature does not want to work properly.
Buddy, eat a banana instead of a pickle.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's
And if
it.
it works for Blake Coleman, it works for me.
But every other athlete on the planet eats bananas to not cramp up.
They didn't score. Most of them didn't score 30 goals last year, though, as a third liner on the Calgary Flames.
And I mean, I don't think Danny Heatley ever consumed any potassium in his NHL career, and he scored 50 in 07. All he has is things in common with Lightning McQueen, like speed. He is speed.
Let's see.
I can't make a meme of that after this. I'll get in trouble with Sharks and Senators and Thrashers fans.
Let's see. Yeah, so this is the biggest stat that I think really stands in the way of that narrative.
Jesus.
So coaches aren't on the hot seat is a ludicrous notion, as McMahon points out, because 19 changes, which is almost 33% of NCAA D1 have occurred in the last 3 years at the head coaching position, and half of those were firings. So, like, I don't disagree with the general veneer of this rambling, but that coach is probably just a little bit out of touch with the trends that are going on in the NCAA currently.
That'll happen.
There's definitely so many narratives that are so fascinating with this for college hockey that, like, we haven't even, like, people haven't even started touching the surface on, like, one area of criticism I have for the NCAA in the wake of this is, I'm a big, casual UMass Lowell supporter. I'm a casual UNH fan. I'm a casual Merrimack supporter. And, one of the biggest problems, and this trickles down from D1 to D2 to D3, and I do think Division II may see a resurgence due to the fact that they're going to have that they retain their scholarship eligibility.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised with this recent ruling if D2 actually sees some expansion in the next several years due to its scholarship platform and the fact that you're going to have, the influx of CHL players coming in, overages were now, Canadian Tier 1 junior players are going to leverage Division I college ice hockey the way that, Tier 2 and Tier 3 junior players are leveraging Division III ice hockey, which is going to be very fascinating with the 20-year-old, 21-year-old freshmen at the scholarship level. But where this becomes super fascinating is, and where I got it with this, with UNH, with Maine, with Merrimack, and all of these schools, even in the super well respected, super talented Hockey East, barns aren't being sold out. So now we're kind of getting into a world of like, is the NCAA and its conferences from tier, D1, D2, D3, actually like, because now we're going to need to see roster expansions and, buying Munter's refrigeration units to maintain an ice rink is very fucking expensive.
Oh yeah.
So you look at all these schools in D1, you look at the schools, in the Midwest that don't currently sponsor Division 1 or 3 ice hockey. And like, are we finally going to see any of these conferences like in schools get their shit together and put real marketing resources into, selling tickets and securing fairly lucrative TV deals like what, the NCAA football or, NCAA basketball currently has? Like, you and I talked about at length, fuck Nesson with their BC coverage last year. And like, if that's the current state of Division One college ice hockey, and we're about to finally have, the NCAA having the expansion to do what college football and basketball do, of truly having, for the most part, the best players under the age of 25 that aren't in the NHL. They're like, is the NCAA, is Hockey East, is ECAC, is WCHA, like, are these conferences in the Division One sphere ready to actually invest in the business end of what they do to make this profitable and actually like expand and take advantage of this? And then subsequently, as our conferences at the D3 level, like the NEHC, Minnesota, and now the LEC, like, are these conferences, and I think the LEC and NEHC are very much actually very well prepared on at least their broadcasting side, where they've got their own internal network. If I recall correctly, NEHC and the NE10 for D2 has a monetized streaming platform at the moment through Flow Hockey. So like,
which is dumb.
well, it is dumb, but it's very smart in the sense that Division 3 schools like the conferences like the NEHC and the NE10 are more configured to make revenue off of what's about to happen than even the WCHA and the ECAC that don't even have a broadcasting deal. Like ESPN prominently features Hockey East, and I know that they have a deal for streaming with regional broadcast, but like the fact that some of the upper echelon D3 programs have a more profitable broadcast model than Division One right now is something to really look at. Where you and then you look at the MassCAC, who will probably be eliminated within 5 years based off of this decision due to their inability to have any like. You look at the LEC, right, and how they're going to be able to leverage this. They already have their own internal broadcasting platform configured. They have, at least 5 teams that have national tournament aspirations. Maybe 2 or 3 of them will actually get there this season. But they've got a logical travel schedule. They have teams that play high-end opponents. For example, Castleton, playing a back-to-back with Hobart this weekend and playing fucking phenomenal defense in 2 games that they lost. But nevertheless, like, all of this is already consolidated to a platform. And with appropriate and proper marketing, like, there's going to be the ability where, the D1 cast-offs that, are high-end NCDC and NOL players and, low-end, OJHL guys.
I'd say even like high-end OJ, low-end AJ, maybe even MJ guys come in and play at top 20 schools.
Yeah. So like the ability for the stronger conferences in D3 to take advantage of, the NCAA as a whole needs to have a firm marketing plan, because like college hockey needs to be profitable beyond just the blue bloods. Where like, we look at a BU and we look at BC and we look at the Pios and we look at St. Cloud and we look at Michigan and Ohio
and North.
Those teams in North Dakota, of course, in the Minnesotas, like, their benefit out of this isn't what people like. Now it's going to be what 21-year-old and 20-year-old CHL players are now going to become exceptional bottom six and bottom pairing defensemen and potential starting goalies on crappy goaltending teams like the University of New Hampshire. Like that's really the holes that are going to get plugged. Like blue bloods get deeper, and then maybe some fringe guys get a look for a school that they normally like. The University of Vermont is a school that has a lot to gain from this because of its proximity to southwestern Quebec. Like Vermont, has a lot to gain from this, specifically in the D1 sphere. The University of Maine has a lot to gain from this just on, geopolitics and the fact that, like, they're going to have more middle six positions open for, the CHL guys coming through. And you look at, like, what's it called? Stonehill, which I think, is the school that the CHL coach confused Holy Cross with last season. They're going to be able to build an entire new roster out of CHL players that are just looking for, free education. So, like, but at the end of the day, what's important for these universities is the ability to actually, monetize and be profitable and not be fucking losing money on, this expansion and creating a better quality product. And, really, I think the NCAA needs to look across to another professional league, specifically the PWHL, and we can completely ignore their on-ice product for this comparison. And you look at what the PWHL invested financially in their broadcasting and their social media work alone, and really their podcast and third-party support through things like the Jocks and Jills podcast that has grown massively in the first season, like leveraging both internal first-party conference-funded broadcasting deals combined with partnering with, prevalent third-party podcasts and media support is how this is all going to work without the NCAA, like, hockey making a fucking ass of itself. And D3 is so far behind the curve on this, where there's really only two mid-major grassroots journalist outlets, D3 Hockey News, our boy, Sweet, that man's covering, 100 Sugar, thank you. I saw Tim Sweet earlier for one of the schools in the LEC, and my brain was just like, sweet sugar, and I'm in an information overload. But really like the fact that there's only one super prevalent D3 like national outlet, and that fucking dude's covering like 100 schools almost by himself, and he's covering men's and women's, and there's really no grassroots outside of him and our tiny ass footprint here, really just doesn't spell a lot of optimism unless Barstool Sports picks somebody up to actually like do the damn thing.
They could. I mean, you could also see either D1 teams create like an SEC conference for those Power 5 schools. I know what they were talking about before, like Georgia's trying to build a Division I rank. Bama used to have a Division I program itself. You could throw one at LSU, you could throw one at Auburn, you can throw one at North Carolina. Like, there's already club teams that are well established that you could make that jump up and have that backing from the community and everybody.
I mean, the only challenge in the Southeast is one, the travel schedule, because as you know, from being, in the worst geographically placed school in the MASCAC, travel is such an expensive part where, like, the Southeast Conference would have to then get to a point where they're building rinks with capacity to be profitable, right? Because, like, you need at least a 6,000 seat barn to be profitable on gate without a major TV deal. And not for nothing, but, like, I don't think that there's a major TV deal right now that would look at the SEC if they launched a hockey conference in the next 5 years and said, we're going to make advertising revenue off of, Southern hockey.
Yeah.
Like, if Boston College and Boston University in Wisconsin and Michigan and, there's already questions about the profitability of high-end hockey programs up north.
Which is kind of crazy because...
Well, it's due to hockey culture of, like, even the NHL's profit viability has been doubted and questioned for years because, at every level of hockey, the branding, the marketing outside of, diehard hockey fan, like casual hockey fans compared to other major sports is such a small niche percentage of the United States population. Like, I look at myself as like a casual basketball fan who will observe like 7 NBA games a year total. But like that is substantially more than what the casual American will watch for NHL hockey. Like, and that's kind of the thing. Like you look at last year's women's college basketball national tournament. Absolutely, I'd be willing to bet substantial money without even looking at the data that national tournament had more viewership than every single men's college hockey game put together last year.
Probably. It was massive.
So like men's hockey is not marketed well, and it substantially hurts the viability of Division One expansion. Like you look at, a school like Indiana or Iowa State not having, a Division One hockey program. You look at UMass Lowell not having a Division One women's hockey program. Like the proven markets already struggle, and this is the shot in the arm, talent-wise, for the product that the league needs. And whether or not they're going to maximize it is my biggest concern.
I mean, that's fair. Like, it's crazy being, like, in the middle of it. Because obviously, like, playing it, hearing guys from different teams that you're buddies with, because everybody's really close. It's a small world, whether people like to leave or not. And then hearing, like, the reporting side of it is just, hearing the worlds collide is just a crazy thing to think about. Because it's just a different view and a different perspective that you would never see, because I'm so close to it personally that you don't look at it as a reporter. You just see it as a player.
Yeah. And, in this case, you see it from Liam's, point of view as, just a very, very intelligent late 20s, early 30s man, collecting data and having a very strong online presence. And then you see it from me, an operations manager who does little bits of marketing in his day-to-day job, maybe giving an alternative perspective from what you're even going to see from, the hockey media world.
It's very curious, like, because it's funny to think, like, I think my CHL fascination for purposes of operations, it began sort of by accident, because watching those like couple of WHL games back to back last October, it was like it was like one thing that left an impression on me as like, oh yeah, this has to be a central part of analysis, just because like of you never know when you might stumble upon someone in that environment who's sort of bubbling under. And it's funny, like, because at that time, like, it was like, I just want to see Berkeley Catton. Like, is he really just this absolute phenomenal speed demon that everybody's saying he is? And then it ended up being freaking Cole Resney, who was like Zach Benson 2.0, that caught my attention. And I was like, I just want to watch as many of these guys as possible. But like, there was a philosophical element to it as well, where I was like, this junior hockey at that stage is just sort of like a very curious concept of like it's sort of like a for-profit business, and yet at the same time, it's sort of like a cultivator, like other elite hockey programs are, with like this sort of model citizen ideal, and like with their scholarship program and everything, despite it being practically like a low-level pro league as well. But it was also like very few people will have their eyes on this product, even though this is still where most NHL players are coming from. Like very few people in the United States, and even in Canada, they could probably do a better job of promoting their product, which like, it's funny now because we can see that potential as like an NCAA feeder, as well. It's going to spring to life in that respect too. But it's like with their lack of success, like being able to stand on their own two legs without significant help from the NHL, it's like I'm thinking about the QMJHL, whose statement on this topic I'll read in just a moment. As Additionally, and their intent to expand back into the United States, which will probably be in New England, just because it would make the most sense for them to have like a developed symbiotic relationship with the place they're going to probably produce the most players for. And it's like you could very much capitalize like, oh, this team based in Manchester or Portland or maybe even Lowell, who knows, is going to be like a big NCAA feeder. But it's like, and then you can like capitalize on the relationship between the two sides. But it's like both the NCAA and the CHL are already so terrible at promoting their product as is. So are they just going to fuck it up like somehow? Let's see. Let's see. We don't have. Yeah, that's funny. I was like, man, the Q is the last to put out a statement on this, basically, and sure enough, they seem to be least in the loop about what was going on. As QMJHL Commissioner Mario Cecchini states, we don't have all the details of the new rule at this time, but based on what we do know, we view this historic change in a positive light. First and foremost, I believe this is beneficial for the players. The players and their families won't have to rush to make an important decision at such a young age, i.e. 15, which is something I've always thought of myself. Like, you know, it might not be their best option, but like sometimes they're forced into it because they're, you know, going to be taking that next stage in their dev career the following season. All the best players from 16 to 20 years old will have the opportunity to play in the QMJHL/CHL at large, the best development league in the world. For the QMJHL and our 18 teams, the player is always at the heart of our priorities, he added. I hear often from our alumni that their years in the QMJHL were the best years of their lives. We are delighted that after completing their careers in the QMJHL, players will have additional options to pursue their athletic and academic goals. We are also very much looking forward to welcoming a whole new wave of talented players who, under the old rules, avoided our league to preserve their NCAA eligibility. Of course, this would have been WHL and OHL products, but it's funny because like we saw that be the case for both Macklin Celebrating and Adam Fantilli. Like they were both intrigued by the possibility of going the CHL route, but they didn't want to compromise their NCAA eligibility status. The QMJHL is proud to point out that once players' commitments are completed, they have access to important scholarship programs. For the 2023-24 season alone, over $2 million in scholarships were awarded to our alumni via the league and its teams. The QMJHL will continue to do everything in its power to contribute to the development, guidance, and success of our players both on the ice and at school, concluded the commissioner.
All right, so two things that I kind of thought about. This is kind of separate to what we've been talking about, but also with it. So CHL players are also able to make money and get paid by teams. Do they now stop that because they're a part of the NCAA, or do USHL guys and NOL guys potentially start to get paid when they go to different teams?
The on the margin aspect of that I've read is that basically the under the table, like larger payment things are probably going to stop just because, you know, there's too much risk there. What they're probably going to continue to do is just provide a baseline of like providing just enough money to afford basic living expenses. And that's probably it. Additionally, it's worth noting that the biggest threat that there's always been to NCAA eligibility, like the foundation of it, was that guys are allowed to sign an NHL contract, return to their clubs in the CHL, and collect money from the signing bonus that they got. So if you have already signed a contract, then you can't then report to the NCAA.
No, I know that. I'm just talking like when.
Well, no, the stipend's not going away. Because that's never really been the reason. Like it's always just been about the contract situation. But like if there won't be there are guys who do get additional money on top of that, usually by
Yeah.
endorsement deals or like under the table things like Sidney Crosby, Connor Bedard, and Connor McDavid were making a fuckload of cash there. Guys like that, it's either going to cease outright or anybody who's that sort of dough isn't going to be allowed through the doors of the NCAA.
Fair enough.
I mean, of course, most of those guys don't age out because this is a consistent thing that's been going on. Because now I see the commissioner of the WHL, Dan Neer's statement as well. He says today's announcement that CHL players will now be eligible to compete in NCAA D1 hockey beginning in the 25-26 season represents a historic and consequential outcome that will be celebrated by all of those invested in the on and off ice development of young players. The decision creates opportunity for the brightest elite hockey players in Western Canada and the Western U.S. to now choose the WHL as the preferred destination for their development at the age of 16 to 20 without fear of compromising their NCAA eligibility. As always, let's see, the player is at the heart of what we do across the WHL through our 22 member clubs. Most of our graduates note their time in the dub were their best years of their lives. We're kind of hearing the same platitudes repeatedly. We are thrilled that upon graduation from the WHL, key thing there, you basically have to age out. Players will have additional options as they pursue the next step in their personal and hockey journey. We look forward to the opportunity to welcome a new wave of talent, and we take great pride in our responsibility to support all WHL players in the pursuit of their goals, be that on the ice, in the classroom, and as contributing members of the community. Players completing their eligibility with the WHL will continue to receive access to our leading post-secondary scholarship funded by our 22 member clubs. In the 23-24 season, the education bills for over 300 WHL alumni were paid directly by the league and clubs, totaling in excess of $3 million in funding. The WHL is proud to continue this practice. The best in the West can now look forward to chasing their dreams alongside one another in the world's finest development league for junior hockey players, the Western Hockey League. It's interesting because like some guys have definitely seen the pivot, not just the dudes who like committed while actively on CHL rosters, which we saw spring up. Whitehead was the first, but there are a couple others after him. But the first was actually Noah Kosick, who's been kind of a nomad. So he started off. He I think committed when he was still in the Canadian Sports School Hockey League out in on the Pacific Coast. Then he was initially like committed to I think play in the BCHL, then pivoted from that, played 4 games for the Sioux Falls Stampede in the USHL, then left to go play for the Calgary Hitmen, who he's currently with, and now he's going to be playing for the University of Michigan at 26, 27. The kid's definitely well-traveled. And I think he made his commitment back in like March. So I have to wonder if like family representation were like, oh yeah, you know what? I think the tides are probably going to change with the current conversations that are going on with this. It's definitely seems to be the general trend that I've seen there. But yeah, tier 2 junior implications. I did have both the BCHL, although they're kind of an unsanctioned league at this point. But, similar model. Their statement read, with today's decision by the NCAA to allow CHL players eligibility for Division I hockey, the BCHL remains committed to its development model of preparing student athletes for college hockey on the ice, in the classroom, and in the community. The BCHL has been around for 63 years and has been a pipeline to the NCAA for decades, with league alumni currently making up 25% of all Division I players, which is more than all other Canadian leagues combined. For the past 4 years, the BCHL has taken steps to improve our standards and enhance our resources for the student athletes while using our independence to our advantage. The BCHL is committed to doing whatever is best for our athletes and will continue to adapt to the changing landscape of junior hockey. It's funny because like sometimes you read some of these statements and it sounds like they're just coping, but the BCHL is different because their fate is not directly tied to that of Hockey Canada, like other tier 2 junior leagues or even the CHL are, because they're funded exclusively by third party revenue, and like they don't have like the same regulations and whatnot. So I can imagine that they might be standing on better ground than some of those other leagues are, but it is interesting to consider. But at a minimum, like I imagine like the bigger teams like Penticton and Brooks are going to be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, Penticton and Brooks are kind of, the gold standard for what a Canadian junior program should be without, all of the questionable Canadian, hush money that kept the other three leagues afloat. But I digress, and we've gone down that road many a times on this program.
Oh yeah. The CHL's statement itself read, let's see, the Canadian Hockey League, along with its member leagues, the WHL, OHL, and QMJHL, are aware of the rule change announced earlier today by the NCAA, which alters the eligibility of CHL players, allowing them to play NCAA Division I hockey starting next season. While we will take time to fully review this change, we believe this is a positive development that will provide our players with more opportunities to continue their hockey and academic careers following their time in the CHL. It will also give young players and their families more options in choosing their development path, which includes opening up the CHL to more players worldwide. For 55 consecutive years, the CHL has been the number one supplier of talent to the NHL. At the beginning of the 24-25 campaign, there were 390 CHL graduates on NHL rosters, marking once again the most of any development league in the world. Additionally, at last summer's 2024 NHL draft, the CHL led the way as 88 CHL players were drafted, including 14 in the first round. We remain strongly committed to carrying on that tradition of success on the ice while embracing the enhanced academic options that this rule change will present off the ice. Yeah, no. Like I say, sometimes they kind of fall short in their aspirations, but that balancing act will continue and will benefit some more than others. All right, Hockey Journal will give you your look now. Let's see. Evan Maranowski, that's the author. Let's see. Well, it finally happened. On Thursday, the NCAA D1 Council voted to allow players from the Canadian Hockey League to play college hockey. They're eligible to begin participating August 1st, 2025. Recruiting those players can begin immediately. Players are allowed to play in the CHL without losing NCAA eligibility so long as they aren't compensated more than actual necessary expenses for their participation. Yeah, there we go. Those expenses include things such as equipment, ice time, medical treatment, lodging, and transportation. One thing to note is that the vote could also allow European players who have played in a professional environment. Well, that one is already kind of complicated as is, because we've seen Tom Verlander play in the SHL and was able to participate. The thing with that is that it was an uncompensated affiliate that he didn't get paid for. So like, I wonder if they keep the language the same or if they change that at all. And then even then, like, you have to evaluate it on a case by case basis. Like, I think about Adam Benak and how he departed from the Czech Extraliga to the USHL. And we still don't know if he received any backdoor compensation for those Extraliga games or if he was paid directly or not. Like, I would like to get a lot more clarity on questions regarding that situation.
Yeah,
Let's see.
but you know as well as I do, that we're not going to get that kind of clarity probably until a couple years down the road.
Not directly, no,
Yeah.
but like when I think about some of these individual situations, like I am really surprised that Frank Saravalli, and I've kind of hit upon this before, or some insider of that nature has not made a declaration about is this guy eligible or not, especially with the profile that some of these guys have, especially Benak with how much of a dominant force he was at the Holinka Gretzky 2 years in a row, and then like being good enough to have a pro call up, and then for some reason still ending up with the Youngstown Phantoms in his draft year. Like,
You know, I mean, you and I both know the reason why is Saravalli's bombshell takes are always just bad. Like,
well, this isn't even a take
I know,
based thing.
I
Like,
know.
this is just one of those things where he can be reliable. Not always. There are times where I see a report from him and I'm like, unless it's about the Carolina Hurricanes, who he's especially plugged in well with, I probably don't believe this until someone else says it. But like if he gives a report, there's at least like a 50-50 shot that it might have some legitimacy to it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm also just bitter on Saravalli because he's just so like the Saravalli is to, I think Saravalli would be to the Banach situation where I think Nick Jonas or Joe Jonas was to the MCR reunion thing, where like even if Saravalli is wrong often enough, where like he'd be like, oh, Adam Banach isn't eligible, and just no, literally the entire internet would just be like, shut the fuck up, loser, like no one cares, and then like Dregs would report it like 3 months later, and we'd all just forget that Saravalli was even involved.
Yeah, well, I mean, with that, with something with those sort of implications, I can imagine like probably like Freed or somebody would probably be digging into it at the exact same time. And then, or I don't even know. I'm not going to say Pagnota because he also is not a real insider, if we're being honest with ourselves. Um, and I also don't really trust anybody who's like a reporter for the most part who is positively disposed to the Canadiens, unless his name is Mark Dumont. Like pro Habs journalists are probably the biggest fucking shit stains as is. Shit stains there are because like as is, I feel like the Canadiens fans already have a significant impact on hockey narratives. You'd think it would be Canadian, if it would be Maple Leafs fans with how vocal they are, but no, like
Worst
the
fans in
whole, I feel
hockey.
like it's the Habs teams that have the biggest impact because like of just like they really buy into anything that their org seems positively disposed to, and then with the esteem that they have, rightfully or wrongfully, sometimes both. Like that tends to sell things. Like I think about the Ivan Demidov, Matvey Michkov conversation, and it's like Demidov was just a name who was like a highly touted Russian prospect that was just like somebody like was people were just looking for a successor to Matvey Michkov's mantle because they wanted him to fail. And then when it turned out when Habs fans discovered that the Canadiens organization was high on Demidov, that was just something that ramped up the intensity of something that should have never been a conversation to begin with. Because if we're being honest, if without that dialogue, Demidov is probably just treated as like another high-end Russian prospect in a normal draft class rather than a generational talent who's been artificially propped up against somebody who genuinely is already, basically like Kucherov and Kaprizov put in a blender, but on a faster dev pace than at either of those guys. So it's like, but with that, you're looking at somebody who's probably going to end up being one of the best to ever lace them up when all is said and done. It's a totally false dichotomy.
And on that note, I'm going to wheel us into something similar to our usual big finish, but with a little bit of a more open floor for Matt because I don't know when we'll have him back on here again. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Liam, and then I'll kick it over to myself for my big finish, and then we'll kick it over to Matt to open up the floor to whatever he really wants to bring to the table while he's with us this week. Sound like a plan?
Yeah, sure. Just have two more quick headlines. I wanted to congratulate Kamloops Blazers head coach and general manager Sean Clouston, who won his 573rd career WHL game on Friday night when leading Kamloops to a 4-3 victory over the Saskatoon Blades. As John Keane, their play-by-play guy, noted, this moves him into sixth place all time in WHL history in career wins as a head coach. A lot of successful years there, as well as with the Medicine Hat Tigers prior to that. It's weird to think that they've had a head coach other than Willie Desjardins in this century. But yeah, although, of course, Desjardins did have that stint in the NHL, which I try to forget happened. Definitely was just not cut out for that environment, but that's okay. We'll quickly knock down the OJHL's statement as well on the recent rule change. The OJHL is excited about the decision by the NCAA Division I Council to make CHL players eligible for NCAA D1 hockey. This groundbreaking ruling will have a profoundly positive impact on the development of young hockey players across Canada. The OJHL has long been committed to fostering a strong player development model, and this decision perfectly aligns with our goals. We have been actively working on a strategy for months, anticipating this development. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that the CJHL's constituent leagues would, be prepping for the changing in the tides, knowing full well it was probably going to happen. And we are excited to continue collaborating with our partners within Ontario to provide even greater opportunities for our athletes. This decision puts the development of the athlete at the forefront. We are enthusiastic about the bright future it holds for players in our province. Marty Savoy, Commissioner. But speaking of Ontario-based hockey products, I hate to say it, but I really had to put one of Philadelphia's players in the crosshairs here. I think it's time for the Morgan Frost experiment to come to an end. Like, I know that, like, as is, his contract is going to run out, and they're not going to re-up him because this was his second prove-it deal, and he just hasn't made an impression yet again. But, like, I always know he gets off to a slow start, as is, but, like, if you look at this by the advanced numbers, looking at puck marks, model specifically, input data collected via moneypuck.com, by the way, for credit to them as well. It's significantly worse than even usually is. It's like, so this is in a third line role, mind you, although it's interesting to note that he's also been Mitchkov's most common line mate, which might have had a detriment on Mitchkov's 5v5 numbers, although it's not like they, as Derek Dunn has pointed out, they were staple to the hip or anything like that. But like it is an indicator that some of that lack of point generation can be attributed to that, and that the fact that he's generated our most offensive or rather expected goals for at 5v5 despite that is fucking remarkable. But here are Morgan Frost's numbers in that model. 3 percentile 5v5 offense, placing him in the detrimental bracket in the tier ranking system that this model uses. 12 percentile 5v5 defense, placing him in the poor bracket. 13 percentile shot efficiency, placing him in the poor tier. 6% penalty differential percentile, which places him in the detrimental tier as well in that respect. it's worth noting on ice shot percentage 9.43%. But he's part of the reason for that. I'm not even gonna bring up the fact that his on ice save percentage is shit, because that's been the case for everybody on the team because of the goaltender situation. Sure, the defense lets them down too, but the goalies do even more so. But nevertheless, all of this culminates to the fact that Morgan Frost, again, mind you, as a third liner, not even a high responsibility role at this point. Although it is, yeah, sure, it's not. It doesn't help that Torts is constantly shuffling the lines, but nevertheless, not a lot has been asked of Morgan Frost so far this season. He is in the first percentile in wins provided percentage. I think if you could give him lower than one, it would be a more accurate depiction of how horrendous Morgan Frost has been this year. Like, this one goal throughout the season to this point is only scratching the surface of how awful Morgan Frost has been. Well, really just expected to be a third line offensive producer. Like, then being given sheltered minutes and helpful deployments with who he's with and all of that, like, I'm honestly just like in a rush to get him off the team, where like just trade him for like a low round draft pick. It could be a 7th rounder for all I care. To just get him away from this group sooner rather than later. They've given him a lot of chances based off of how productive he was in the OHL. But ever since he like snapped his leg in that game against Calgary, he has just not been the same, despite the promise that he showed. And he always just goes on these heaters when the season's over and in games that don't matter anyways. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a second half player if the second half isn't going to be consequential anyways. He's just like, I honestly think Morgan Frost might be the low grade version of Aaron Judge in the NHL. He's just a low leverage offensive star who never is there when it actually matters. But it's just like, honestly, Briere, just pick up the phone and trade him for a 6th or 7th right now. Like, this just cannot continue.
Yeah. Speaking I'll trade your Ross Johnston 1 for 1. um, Somehow I still think you'd be getting the better end of that deal. No. Really just want to highlight Kirill Kaprizov, man. Probably the most the best value contract in sports, at least in the NHL. I mean, the fact that the Minnesota Wild are again competing with a 68 to 72 million dollar roster, like this team is fucking missing 14 million in salary cap because of buyouts, and they are second place in the best division in hockey. And he is, you know, the X factor I talked about in the offseason with Minnesota was, could their depth pieces show up and bridge the gap this year? And I asked the wrong fucking question. I guess the question should have been, can Kirill Kaprizov find a whole nother gear to his game where he somehow just offsets the roster depth issues because of their salary cap? And through the first 14 games of the year, he's having one of the best seasons, one of the best stretches of hockey I've ever seen from a non-center. Like, what he's done so far in this opening 6th of the season is just fucking unbelievable. Just the value on both ends of the ice. And, if this keeps up, he's going to be a landslide leader for the MVP and just won't win it because, the Russian factor and the fact that he plays for fucking Minnesota.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
And with that, we open the floor up to Matt to really take his time to open up whatever hockey narratives he wants to pursue.
I mean, a big one going around the team right now is Shesterkin's contract and how he turned down an $88 million by 8. He's not worth 11 mil. So I don't know why he turned that down. It's a hot take. He's a very, very good goaltender, don't get me wrong. I think the Rangers right now have the best tandem in hockey with him and Quick, because Quick is not letting age affect him either, which a lot of people still think that it is, but it's really not. I think you could also give Swayman until Thanksgiving to figure it out a little bit more because the Bruins are in absolute shambles, but also he didn't get a preseason game. He kind of just got thrown right into the fire after waiting so long to sign a contract. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you missed like a whole training camp and preseason and everything, like, and then enter that shit situation overall. It's not going to be easy.
exactly.
especially with the way that the Boston Bruins, Don Sweeney really does deserve so much praise for single-handedly blowing apart one of the most competent blue lines the league has ever seen. Like Nikita Zadorov is a 1D as a top pairing D is wildly irresponsible from both him and Montgomery. But we also can't ignore the fact that like Parker Weatherspoon, Andrew Peak, like these are not good defensemen. And Brandon Carlo is Brandon Carlo, and the Charlie McAvoy PP1 experiment's gone on to like Montgomery and Sweeney have also done very few favors to for Swayman, or really anyone. Like it's impressive, but to pivot to the Shesterkin thing, I think that the number one factor for why Shesterkin is not accepting that deal comes down to what we talked about earlier about the NCAA. With we're in what year 2 of the 10-year or 5-year 5-year?
I think it was supposed to be 5 because it was
Yeah.
like definitely. I can't imagine they would give anything too long-term binding given the circumstances under which that agreement was crafted. Like, as
So,
like
so
standard CBA, yeah, absolutely a 10-year agreement, but that was like a COVID emergency thing, basically.
So like we have 5 years left on the CBA, and we have about 5 years left on the ESPN $2 billion TV deal. So Shesterkin and his agency are hedging their bets on, gate-driven league revenue, that we've talked about. Like, for example, the growth of the PWHL and the growth of the NC are also factors for the growth of the NHL. If more people are watching at the NC from Canada, you're going to get more U.S. buy-in as college hockey expands, the PWHL's free YouTube viewership model, and their inevitable growth combines with the NHL's potential for hockey-related revenue growth. So effectively, Shesterkin's going to turn down an $11 million a year deal because he thinks, let's face it, from Shesterkin's point of view, what if the salary cap 5 years from now is $125 million?
Yeah, he's gonna want to eat it all up.
So like his team, because of the like Shesterkin turning down that contract is potentially bad for him and the Rangers, but the fact that he turned that deal down, I think, is good for the NHL because that means that Shesterkin's agency is optimistic that the league's revenue growth, its hockey-related revenue growth, which is what dictates the salary cap, is going to increase at a very fast rate over the next 5 to 10 years, which is also, I think, the reason Swayman waited for so long is his agent also kind of sat there and was like, well, if the salary cap is about $88 million right now and things keep growing the way that it's growing, who's to say that in 3 years we're not at the $100 million mark? And Swayman's making 9% of the Bruins salary cap right now, but 3 years from now he's going to be making 7%. And that's really the consequential factor for Shesterkin's contract.
I want to say, though, I feel like the forward group that has been assembled by Boston shouldn't get leave this unscathed either. Like, I mean, like, you just, for one thing, you brought in Elias Lindholm under the pretenses he was going to be a facilitator, and like that hasn't panned out. And now, like, they're having these goal scoring woes, which therefore entails very little offensive zone presence, especially once the third period comes around, which they've just been completely allergic to, especially at home. Like, they scored one goal in the third period at home in their first home game and have not done so since. Uh, and then just generating so few shots, like not having a single SOG in like over 20 minutes of play, and then having 16 overall in a game. It's just pathetic because they just have too many like grinders on that roster on both ends. Like you just have like a bunch of bottom nine guys filling up the top part of the forward group, and it's just like it's going exactly the way you thought it would, and like Swayman is paying the price just through like these absolute CTE riddled geniuses on both the forward and defensive cores, just absolutely putting him through hell.
I'm gonna hit you with something completely unrelated, Liam. I think Greg Cronin finally figured out where Cutter Gauthier belongs. On a line with Ross Johnston, apparently, as he managed a primary apple on a Brett Leasing goal with a secondary apple from Ross Johnston. You know, apparently the Andre Gassot connection logic works for him better at the NHL than playing him with high-end talent.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to that, and it makes sense given like where he seems to excel the most. Like the kid has told himself that he is Mark Scheifele, and then tries to also play like Austin Matthews. But the thing is, like I've always said, like looking back, especially on some of the moments in which he thrived, like playing through contact, especially at tournament play with the USA, like I like there was that one sequence against Sweden in the WJC gold medal game where like he does a reverse hit while doing a full spin while also successfully conducting a breakout pass. And I was just like, if he just like embraced his physical gifts there and also sort of just tried to play more like, I don't know, the midpoint between Timo Meyer and Jason Arnott, he would probably do much better at the NHL level than he has done trying to be who he tells himself that he is. But I think there's something to the narrative that he might be too mentally soft to play that way. I don't usually like that sort of rhetoric, but I think there might be some validity, like, oh, you have to play this way under John Tortorella, and he just was completely resistant to it, and that might have factored into his decision to walk. And it's like the ironic thing is a version of Cutter Gauthier that plays like Jason Arnott would probably be a legitimately impactful NHL player, even if he were not a superstar.
Well, so far, fourth line Cutter experiments is off to a good start. Anything else anybody want to throw out here at the end of our run, as we are now deep into our second overtime?
Yeah. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Team Canada White for their gold medal victory in the World U17 Hockey Challenge in Sarnia, which just concluded last night. Particularly want to credit team captain Keaton Veerhoff for his success there, as well as his selection to the tournament all-star team with him and Landon DuPont of Team Canada Red taking the defensive spots. Much credit to goaltender Gavin Betts of the Pickering Panthers of the OJHL for being selected to that team as well. Other selections included to that squad include Mathis Preston, who of course I just published an article on today. Quite possibly the right-handed Cole Eiserman of the 2026 NHL entry draft. Been pretty reliable for Spokane Chiefs, the Spokane Chiefs to this point in his WHL career relative to his age, as well as the USA's Victor Plant and Sweden's Marcus Nordmark, who the latter especially had a pretty impressive tournament. Some pretty good showings there from guys in that 26, 27 draft eligible space. Also, for a quick update on that Saginaw Spirit versus Flint Firebirds game, the final score was 7-2 in favor of Saginaw, as Caleb Mangoni, who I've seen kicked around as another guy, undersized but skilled, who could be going the NCAA recruiting route when all is said and done, had a natural hat trick to wrap up the game and earned first star honors. He also had 1 assist and a +5, so that was pretty impressive. Michael Misa, just the 1 goal, but also an assist to keep up his impressive pace to start the year and continue his campaign for the first overall pick in 2025. But yeah, all these junior and college headlines were quite, quite enriching to dive into this week. It should be interesting to see the landscape evolve. Some of these impacts will be immediate, some down the road, but they're all going to be drastic, and it'll be curious to track it in real time, as well as just these continued great on-ice performances by some of these prospects that I've been continuously tracking. But yeah, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to everyone who is checking us out on Spotify. The dynamic in the room is a little different now, but we're convinced we can continue to put out a product that you will want to engage with. So thank you for your ongoing support, and we hope to see you stick around. And we'll see what else the future brings for us. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.